So my name is Chelsea, and I will be your host and moderator for today's panel. Now, before we officially begin the discussion, I'd like to take a moment to share some announcements with you all, as well as read out the results from our poll. Our YouTube channel has a recording of all our past Event Insider sessions, along with other content about the platform. So definitely subscribe to the Whova channel to receive notifications of our latest videos. Now, in the days leading up to this session, we opened 5 poll questions for everyone to answer. Now, the polls are still available for everyone to share their responses, but first I'd like to go through those submitted responses, as these are some of the topics that we will cover with our guest speakers. Once again, if you're interested in participating, this will be in the polls tab on the Whova platform. So the first question that we asked our panelists today, what do you want to get the most from this session? So taking a look at some of the responses, we see some fresh and innovative ideas, best practices, learning how to gamify events and best practices, to understand how other people use gamification and how they measure the success of it. Those are some wonderful responses, so thank you so much to those who answered that one. Now, moving on to the next question we asked our participants is, have you implemented event gamification in your previous events? Now, the results here, overwhelming is yes at about 76% and no at about 24%. Then moving on to our third poll question, we asked, what type of event gamification have you implemented in your events? Now, it looks like the majority, leading with about 50%, is Whova's photo contest. Another top contender is the leaderboard contest in the Whova app, along with the passport contest in Whova. So those are some great features. Thank you all for sharing your experience with that one. We have 2 more questions that we asked. So the next one is, what's your main goal when using gamification or other engagement features? So taking a look at our results here, looks like in the number 1 spot, we have make the event more fun and memorable for attendees. Then following that, we have a tie between boost networking and help attendees meet more people, along with give sponsors and exhibitors visibility in a fun and non-intrusive way. Awesome. Now we have one final question in our polls today. And this question was, what's your biggest challenge in running gamification or engagement activities at events? Now it looks like the number 1 response we've received, about 42% of our participants said coming up with game ideas that fit my audience. Following that, we have getting attendees to actually participate. Well, that was all some wonderful feedback. It's really great to hear those insights on topics that we will be discussing in our panel today. So thank you again to all of our participants who took the time to share their thoughts in today's polls. Now, my final housekeeping announcement before today's panel discussion is that we will reserve at least the last 10 minutes of the session for live audience questions. So if at any moment you have a question that you would like to ask our guest panelists, please drop them in the Whova Q&A tab. Once we end our discussion, I'll begin the live Q&A segment and start with the questions that received the most votes. So aside from submitting your questions, please also vote for other questions you find interesting, and I'll start with those most highly voted for questions first. All right, but now it is officially time to start our discussion and introduce our panelists. So first to our virtual stage is Kamran Akbarzadeh, who is the CEO of the Project Control Academy and the conference chair of the Project Control Summit. Kamran, it's great to have you here today. Would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Thank you very much, Chelsea, for inviting me to this event. And thanks everyone for attending the event. My name, as Chelsea mentioned, is Kamran Akbarzadeh. I am the CEO of Project Control Academy, which is a leading provider of online training programs in project controls. And we also have annual conference that we conduct every year. And I'm also the co-chair of our annual conference called Project Control Summit. So I have some experience with different apps, including Whova app that I can share with everyone here.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction. Now, our second speaker to join us today is Lou Murray, who is a senior account executive and regional lead at Earnest. Lou, we're happy to have you here today. Could you also please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. My name is Lou Murray, and I've been in the financial aid higher education space for about 29 years. And I work with colleges and universities across the US. I've got 13 state region, as well as some regional and national associations that I'm a part of, totaling to around 18 different conferences that I attend a year. And for several of them, I administer the Whova app for the conference committees. To date, I've implemented about 11 Whova experiences, and I'm actually working today and tomorrow on two more for this upcoming fall. Based out in Houston, Texas, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here and help some other folks administer the Whova app.
Thank you, Lou. Great to hear that. We're happy to have both of you here today. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights on event gamification and engagement. But first, I'd also love to start by hearing more about your events before we dive into today's topic. So to start, can you share a bit about the events you've run recently, such as how many days they've lasted, how many people attended, whether you have sponsors or exhibitors, and how many engagement features you implemented? And Kamran, I'll turn to you first for this question.
Yeah, very good. So the latest one that we've had has been our Project Control Summit, the sixth annual one that we had it in Galveston Island Convention Center in Galveston, Texas. And we used Whova app that the conference was from May 6th to 8th, so 3 days conference in person only, no hybrid version. And we had around 350 attendees at the conference. So this was our second in-person conference before 2024, like 2020 to 2023, yeah. So we had the conference in virtually. So and we've used most features in Whova app in this last conference, and we've also, since we are more like online type of business, we do monthly master classes like monthly webinars. So we use engagement sort of features there as well. And also we have courses online that we have to also engage the audience. So the experience is from different aspects of the business.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing. Also, wonderful to hear that engagement has played a role even when you're hosting online virtual events. So thank you for sharing that. Um, and Lou, can you also please share a little bit about your events and how many engagement features were used?
Sure. So I mentioned I've done 11 experiences. I think 10 of those have been within the higher education space. These conferences, most of them, I think all of them except for one was virtual back in the COVID, situation. But I think 10 of them have been in person, and they've ranged from anywhere from some of the states that are smaller associations, so 140 people, and then the biggest one I think that I've implemented was close to 500 as far as users. All of them have sponsors and exhibitors. So usually the exhibitors range from anywhere from 10 to 35. Depending on what state, Texas brings a big one. The regionals and the nationals bring a big one, showing for the vendors. Um, Gamification is always used. We use all of the features within gamification to create engagement. Um, and we usually tailor those to the themes that we have of the conference. There's always some type of a theme related to it, and we just use it to create engagement that way. Um, our conferences are run by folks from across the country through a volunteer committee. For the most part, the Whova committee is usually only me and maybe two other people. Those other folks don't really do a whole heck of a lot, but really help me with auditing in regards to maybe the attendee list, making sure there's no duplicates, making sure that helping me kind of audit, the platform. But for the most part, I'm the guy that sets everything up.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience as well. It's great to have an idea of the types of events that both of you run. So now to get into today's topic, I'd like to start out with your main objectives and strategies behind including event gamification at your events. So the first question I'd like to ask is, what are your main goals when implementing engagement and gamification features for your events? And Lou, I'll turn back to you to start with this one.
Okay. I would just say just that. It's in the question. Engagement. It's the biggest, we're trying to use gamification to get everyone comfortable with the app, engaged in it, and have a little fun with it. Um, the icebreaker is always kind of fun because we always get some characters within the responses to poke fun of other members of the association and stuff. So I always kind of look forward to that one particularly. We want everyone interacting within this app, and most of the associations now, with the exception of maybe one that I work with, is trying to go 100% um, electronic. In other words, no printing of anything, posters, no printing of agendas and that sort of thing. So the goal is to be paperless as possible and creating a network opportunities through the application. So it's real important that we try our best to try to get folks comfortable with the app. And if you can imagine, some generations are easier to do that than others. So we still have a lot of, and I don't mean to pick on a particular cohort, but some elders of our associations that still may not be as comfortable with utilizing the phone versus a manual paper pamphlet type application for the agenda. So we utilize the app for all announcements, details, sessions, speakers, vendors, what have you. So gamification just adds a little fun to it. I think it helps provide some comfort. I would agree with the poll that sometimes it can be a challenge to get folks to participate in the gamification, particularly with like the C-level, directors and administrators that attend the conference. Usually it's more of the frontline type folks that play around with that type of stuff. But I think we're doing better, getting everyone to participate in it.
Well, that's great to hear. Thanks so much for sharing that. And to Kamran, same question for you. What are your main goals for using event gamification?
Yeah, I can echo what Lou mentioned, really the engagement, and for us also the excitement for the conference or for the event that we have prior to the actual gathering of people under one roof. So when we were searching for apps, I can really tell you that Whova app is the only one you can find that has a lot of gaming features and engagement features in it. I've audited a lot of apps, and Whova is really the top one, and that's why we chose to work with that. And you can find a lot of features there that you can use in order to excite the audience before the conference and even during the conference. And as I mentioned, we've used most of the features, and we've got really good feedback from people. When we say that we want to engage the audience, is that when people are engaged, then they talk about it, they share it, and Whova app has a lot of good sharing features. Like if someone is a speaker, I don't need to tell the speaker to go share this, let's say, banner. They can share it themselves. And the same with people when they're attending, they put it on LinkedIn, which is our main social media platform. And we noticed that when someone shares it, then more people get engaged on the social media. and then that could lead to more attendees for the conference. So it's very important to use these features before the conference and not just wait for a few days before. That way, with the notification that we were sending, we were really getting people into action. And that's really what you want to see at the end of the day, that people take action before the conference itself, before the event itself, as well as during the event. So these are the kind of objectives that we have for using gamification and engagement features, and that really worked well.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I really also love the point of how much of a difference it can make by starting at before the event starts, how that can really get the ball rolling with the social sharing and increased engagement throughout. So thank you for that. Now, this also leads into my next question, which is to understand any strategies that you use to help meet your goals with event gamification. So next, I'd like to ask, what is your overall approach to designing event engagement strategies that align with business goals beyond just keeping people entertained? And are there any simple go-to games that consistently perform well? Lou, I'll turn to you first for this one.
The leadership contest game encourages everyone to use the app. It sort of subliminally makes the user want to use it. What's great about that is sort of what Cameron was saying. You know, at the beginning, while the registration process is happening, people are already kind of engaging with some of this competitive nature and networking within it. However, I've noticed within around day maybe two of the event, day three, you start noticing who the competitive folks are, and out of everyone, out of the 400 attendees, it starts getting down to the top five and top three, just going head to head with points, and people stop using that game. So I've always kind of used a leadership board game contest as getting them into the app, knowing that people are going to start falling off of playing that game as they see that their points aren't going to make the winner. Therefore, my next go-to is the photo contest. I'm looking at one I did in a conference I did in Texas, and we had 675 photos submitted. It's always fun for the context purposes, but that contest also helps collect photos that we can share and even put in within our own website, photo bank, if you will, to share these photos and memories. So that's kind of fun. It could depend on the location and the networking events that you're doing throughout the week, how many photos that you're going to get, but we tend to see a lot of participation with the photos. Um, my favorite contest right now, maybe it's because it's new, is the trivia game, because I've been tying the theme of the conference to that trivia game and really trying to make some creatively fun questions to that, and it's been interesting to see that pick up. Now that's a newer game, so I've only really seen that about two times now. Um, but I'm hoping that I can get that one to grow as much as the others.
That's wonderful. Thanks for sharing. I'm glad that those customizable themes have been also a highlight with these
Mhm.
features. So thank you for that. And then Kamran, I'll ask the same for you. What's your approach to aligning your engagement strategies with your goals? And are there any go-to games for your events?
Yeah, so for us, it depends on the event. So if it's, let's say, a course that we want to design and deliver, then we have some strategies there on how to engage people with the course. And we kind of gamify that. We send email when they complete a module. And then at the end, when they graduate, they get a coupon or something, a reward that they can use toward other courses. For the monthly master classes, in order to engage people and keep them throughout the session, we have a resource downloadable type of document that tells them how to claim PDUs for the session. So people will stay until the end, and then they can download, they get the link to download, and the resource has the slides, it has any promotional related with that master class, and also telling them how they claim it when they go to their association in order to put the PDUs, professional development units, about their license or continuing education, whatever it is. And when it comes to the conference, I personally sit and then think about what worked before and what we want to do new. So we use the app, and also we go beyond the app in order to engage people before and during the conference. So for instance, for this May conference, we started about 1 or 2 months before, and definitely leaderboard is the one that people use in order to get noticed. So some people are very competitive and they start things out and they come to the top, but some people wait, and then you can see them that just they quickly go up the ladder. And as Lou mentioned, it just continues until the day that we have to close it. Like it was the last day of the conference, and we had people with about 200,000 points. And there were like top three that they were competing, because we had an award for the winner of the leaderboard, and they were waiting to see, and we had to say we end it at this time so they just don't gain more points, because it was very competitive between the top three. So this really worked very well, for some people. For some others, they're not much interested in showing off or coming to the leaderboard. So photo contest for some others was important, and we had a good number of photos that people posted. And as Lou mentioned, this is a great way that you can also collect photos and share them. And then the polls were very easy to set up to get people engaged before. But having just these things on their own without notifying people, it's not going to work. So you have to consistently notify them, and we come up with a list or a schedule of notifications that we have to send through the app or app and email. One thing that brings more people to use the app, and we had like 95% of attendees using the app. That was our purpose, more than 90%, and we got 95% people who leveraged the app. And then there were the passport contest, because we had used this passport. We called it sponsors hunt game in the past, when people had to, we gave them a card and they had to go to each booth in order to get a stamp. It was the previous year that we used it that way, but then with Whova app, we had we had them just to use the app, and that worked also very well. So we come up with some strategies for using the app, and then we come with some strategies for during the conference. Let's say we come up with some games. One of them was a bingo game, but the bingo game that we designed was relevant to the audience, not really general bingo game. For instance, for our audience, they are project professionals, like project managers, planners, schedulers, risk analysts. So these people are analytical, and we had to come up with something that works for them. So I leveraged AI like ChatGPT to come up with ideas about how to do this. And finally, we designed something called Project Controls Bingo, or emoji contest, but specifically for project professionals. So these were the type of things that we came up with. And then finally, one that really worked was a ribbon stacking contest that I can explain a little bit later about that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all of those experiences, all those different features that you found to be quite successful. And I quickly want to highlight, you both mentioned our photo contest. So I wanted to ask both of you what photo contest themes you have found to be successful. Lou, I can start with you.
Um, you know, I'm not sure if I've seen a theme necessarily for the photo contest. All of them involve offering some kind of prize, and sometimes that prize can be theme related. A lot of them, of the associations, have chosen to use gift cards, but sometimes there's gift baskets that involve a theme, or maybe a e-device. They're giving away some AirPods or something, something to
Right.
that degree. Or maybe even extra tickets to the raffle that we have for our fundraisers. So, you know, maybe they win 50 extra tickets to drop into the buckets, or something to that degree. But our conferences are very theme based, but I'm not sure how outside of just saying share your photos, share. And sometimes the events have, you know, you dress up in costumes for the evening event and that kind of thing. So you'll see a lot of photos coming that way. Um, but outside of that, though, people just want to see themselves. People just want to see their friends. So the photos usually just take off on their own.
Okay, well, that's also great insight. Kamran, have you had any specific themes for the photo contest that were especially successful?
Mm, I cannot say we had the specific themes, but a general photo contest starting from before the conference starts and continuing until it finishes. And the idea was to see who gets the most number of likes. And we were talking about that because at the end we had a winner, right? So we announced the winner on the last day of the conference with a trophy to the winner. And people have come up with ideas, right? So some taking selfies, some getting pictures of themselves while traveling to the United States because we had people coming from different countries and some others just having someone else taking pictures from them. And also we have a caricaturist that created caricatures of people during the conference for like an hour or two. They came and people love these caricatures. So then they would take a picture of that and they post it as a photo. And actually one of them won the photo contest. It was just a caricature of three people together that it got the most number of likes and the group won the photo contest. So it doesn't really need to be just the photo of the person or in front of the conference, let's say booth or something like that. It's just any idea that people come up with in order to capture a moment and then post it there and then others like it and that brings it to the top of the board leaderboard for the photo contest. So that was the idea and overall it worked really well.
Okay, well, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing those experiences. So now to my next question. When it comes to implementing these features into your events, how do you strike a balance between creating a fun and immersive gamification experience while maintaining a professional and educational atmosphere at your events? And Lou, I'll turn to you for this first.
For the industry that I service, it's always about mixing fun and professionalism. The college, university, financial aid space, they're really fun folks. So it's important that the conference tool that we use expresses that. So we use a lot of graphics. The logos, match up what's on the website and the color schemes within Whova. Whenever we can, just to give it that feel. We use conference theme verbiage and lingo, throughout the agenda verbiage and throughout the whole app, actually, the experience within Whova. Our handouts, our PDFs, our announcements, or photos, whatever we can use within Whova, it all sort of ties together. Um, we do have to monitor the community forums sometimes. Everyone's trying to get the most points for the leadership board, and sometimes it can convolute uh, the um, the type of stuff you get in the communication area, the networking conversations area within Whova. So I, in my subcommittee, will go in and if we see somebody that's just putting a question in there, what's your favorite color, just to get points or whatever, we'll kind of delete those or whatever and kind of keep it industry related or conference related. But for the most part, we have some participants having some really good conversations, through that. So it's worth having. Um, we, I think what makes folks want to use the app is the gamification. Without it, there's no other way to really make it fun outside of logos and apps and stuff. So it really provides a good opportunity to do it. And we plug those games as much as we can. Don't forget about the game. It's the second day lunch general session. Hey, while you're at it, don't forget about the games. Don't forget about the games. I'm also a DJ on the side and usually DJ the evening events, and I'll plug the games, as I'm, spinning music and all that kind of stuff. So as throughout the conference, we're constantly plugging the use of the Whova app.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I think it's also a great point. You and Kamra mentioned earlier the use of Whova's announcements can also be really effective at, sending those reminders so people remember, and therefore stay more engaged. So thank you for that. And then Kamran, I'll ask the same question to you. How do you strike that balance of fun and also professionalism with your events gamification?
Yeah, for us, it's really important to have a balance, right? So when we talk about fun, definitely we want people to have fun, but these people are people working in corporates. So some of them are kind of strict and they don't want to have a lot of fun, right? They don't want to see a conference just for fun of it. So on the other hand, we don't want the conference to be dry, like some of these association type of conferences that we had attended, and we thought that this was just right, only presentations. People would not engage much. People may disconnect if it's too dry. So we wanted to have a balance of excitement and fun as well as the learning environment, which is a bit serious too. So that's why we had to bring different type of elements, and we do our best. We sit and think about it maybe 2, 3 months or even more than that to think of what activities we can bring into the conference in order to make it not only fun but also something that is relevant. And that's why I said we created, let's say, the bingo game that was only related to project professionals. So it was something that they had familiarity with, meaning rather than numbers, for instance, we had these bingo cards, right? But instead of the numbers, we had phrases, or we had keywords related to profession on it. And then the balls also had those on them. So we kind of turn the bingo cage, and then one ball comes out, and that's a term or something that people are familiar rather than the general bingo. And then they had to complete that this, and people liked it. Or the emoji game, for instance, I used ChatGPT in order to come up with emojis related to projects, and that could become something that is fun but also creates that sort of competition because people want to guess what it is. So we did this beyond the app. We didn't use Whova app for that. It was just during the conference. um, and then if you want to, let's say, create something on the app that is beyond the photo contest and the other parts that we talked about, the leaderboard, we have the trivia questions, right? So we can make it more relevant to the audience, and that way they also engage more with that because that's something familiar. At the end of the day, all of us want people to take action. And one of those actions for us was that we want people to go and visit the booths. We want people to maybe take advantage of an offer or something that we have about an upcoming course. So these sort of things, you have to think beforehand in order to use the features on the app or beyond that properly. Now, to make it really fun, purely fun for the audience, we also had, as I mentioned briefly, the ribbon stacking contest. I didn't think that would work well the first one time we did it 2 years ago, but really that turned out very well. Some people hate it, some people love it. So we decided to just go with that. And then we ordered some of these fun ribbons that you can order as bulk. And then you can have your organizing team or your volunteers to distribute them, meaning that if someone is interacting or networking, give them one of these ribbons. If someone asks question from a speaker, they get a ribbon. So it's not that you just distribute the ribbons, they have to earn it, and then they stack it on top of their badge. And that way, you not only engage them during the conference, but also you create this fun that they stack them together. And we had like people that had like 6 feet of ribbons, and they show off, and then we announce the winner at the end of the conference. So we do our best to create that sort of balance between the learning, the fun part, and having people to take action as part of that.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that all of those different features were effective and that you're able to strike that balance, as you've mentioned, how important that can be, keeping it really fun but also professional. So thank you so much. So now we have a better understanding of both of your goals and overall approach to implementing different gamification features. I'd like to discuss how it all plays out in practice. So what's worked, what surprised you, and any tactics you use to drive real engagement. Now, when it comes to different ideas for gamification, we know it can be a challenge to make them feel authentic and not just another checkbox for attendees. So I'd like to ask, how do you design games so that they feel fun and natural rather than cheesy and forced? And do you have a go-to method for encouraging attendees to join in without heavy promotion? So Lou, I'll start with you for this one.
Well, everything needs to be tied to the theme, and our conference committees are pretty insistent on that. And honestly, sometimes it is forced, and that's just unavoidable because some of these themes are pretty cheesy. Now, some of them are actually pretty fun and creative. I think it kind of comes down to what prizes you have and how included all attendees feel within the Whova app and their chances to win. Otherwise, why participate, right? So, for starters, upon every start and welcome at the general session of every conference, I get about 4 or 5 minutes to highlight the importance of using the app. The biggest thing that gets to professional people's attention is if we have any changes within times within the room, adjustments, a speaker doesn't show up, we have to pivot. Everything is can be changed live within the app versus old school paper agendas. That wasn't the case. We can change it on the fly. So those that aren't really into the games like to hear that part. Their ears perk up to say, okay, I need to be on this app to make sure I get the latest on what's going on during this week. I have 3 slides within the screenshot that I provide during the opening session, with screenshots I have from the mobile phone as well as the app version if they're using that. And it kind of helps those that are new to Whova. And then it reminds those that are returning to Whova the importance of using the app and where they can find things. The main thing I kind of show is how to use the passport contest because the vendors are hungry. They paid money to sponsor our event and they want to make sure people are going to be coming by. So I show them on the screenshot what the QR code looks like, where to go to scan it, and then I show the vendors where they're going to go to make sure that their little bingo card is being populated correctly. So those types of things are vital to my group because if we don't force it to them to pay attention to the Whova app and they want to rely on printout paper that they did at home or whatever, we got to keep plugging it, keep plugging it, keep plugging it through the whole event. We also show how to use the QR codes, for other networking purposes as well, and that usually kind of helps.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, the QR codes is also very handy for the attendees as well for networking, so that's also a great point. And Kamran, I'll ask the same questions to you. How can you design games to feel more fun and natural for your attendees, and your methods for encouraging them to participate without heavy promotion?
Yes, so we come up with a theme for the conference about 6 to 9 months before the conference. Actually, when we design the website content, we have a theme. So the speakers have to align their presentations with the theme and so on. And then when it comes to about 3 months, when we want to open the app, because Whova recommends 3 months before, like about 90 days. I think our conference was, yeah, it was May 6 to 8. We started early February. As soon as we got that green light, right, we could share that. and announce it. So we just go as soon as possible, about 3 months before, to open the app, and we use the notifications really well. We had a lot of notifications, but we also keep in mind that people don't want to be bombarded with notifications. So it was a balance of emails as well as app notifications. And the emails would tell people, if you haven't installed the app, just go and do it. And the early use of the app really helps with bringing more attendees. The reason is that people who are attending or have registered already, they share their attendance through social media via the app. And then others notice that and then say, oh, this conference is related to me, because that we will be seen by their connections that are usually in the same area when it's on LinkedIn. So that way people get notified and then they may join. So try to open the app as early as possible if you can. But then also the challenge with that is that, are we ready to open the app? And that's why we about 4 months before the conference, we sit with a couple of team members to come up with ideas. Okay, how should we do this part? How should we do that part? What sort of engagement and gamifications we want to have? And personally, in the last couple of years, I've used AI help in order to come up with some ideas, meaning that I give it a role and then say that we have this conference, this is about this is the theme. And then I know when you search Google, you can find different sort of games that you can come up with, or maybe trivial questions that you can put in the app, Whova app. But you want them to be not only engaging, but also to some extent fun and also relevant to your audience. So that's why, rather than thinking a lot and banging your head, AI can really help to come up with ideas as long as you give it the right prompts. And that way we come up with things faster than expected. And then we select some of them because we don't have a lot of time to use these games or fun factors in the event. And then we always have rewards, let's say t-shirt or a coupon code, or let's say a bottle of like a water bottle or something, right? So you give as reward, or for the champions, you can have trophies. So these sort of things, we link every feature that we come up with to a reward. So people say, okay, so I'm going to get engaged, or I'm going to start working on this because there is a reward at the end. So if it's just for the fun of it, or just having people to be part of something, but there is not something at the end that they can try for or make effort toward, they may not get engaged. That's why we have rewards linked to the contest or the games that we have throughout the event, and that really creates that engagement and leveraging the app.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely, the prizes are always a great incentive for utilizing those different features in the app. So thanks for all of those wonderful insights. Now, I would like to shift away from our attendee engagement for a bit and explore a different side of gamification, which supports our sponsors and exhibitors. We know driving meaningful traffic to booths and sponsors is a key objective for many events, and gamification can be both a creative and effective way to make that happen. So I'd like to ask, have you found any ways to use gamification to drive traffic to specific areas? For example, booths, poster sessions, or sponsor zones. And I know Whova's passport contest was mentioned earlier, so if you could also touch on your use of the passport contest and how that's increased traffic for exhibitors. So Kamran, I'll turn back to you to start us off for this one.
Yes, so really the reason we started using Whova app was because of the vendors or sponsors feedback the previous year. So we were using another app. It didn't have some features that sponsors were looking for. One of them was scanning the QR codes for collecting leads. That was not there in the previous app, and Whova had it. Specifically, a couple of sponsors mentioned that they had used this app in another conference, and that's why we just started talking to Whova team. So sponsors or the ones that have booth at the conference definitely look for ways to collect leads, and the app can be used that way. But for us, the passport contest was important. We had a trophy or a reward award for whoever engages with the sponsors or booth vendors. We have the same thing as exhibitors and sponsors. It's the same for us. So whenever I say sponsor, it means exhibitor. So the exhibitors, in the past, we had, as I said, we had a card that they had to stamp, and they would not get that easy. It's not that you just go to a booth and say, okay, so can you stamp this for me? We had told the representatives of the companies who had exhibition or had booth to ask questions, get information, and then once they're satisfied, then they can stamp. The same was for the passport contest this year. Do not just let people easily get it and finish it. You want to tell your exhibitors that this is not just for the sake of getting a lead or for them complete their passport. It's for you also to engage with whoever comes to the booth. And that's why people go there and then they get that scanned from the app, and then they get the point. And that's why some people completed that fully, some people couldn't, because it was not as easy as going to the booth and get it done. So that way it worked, and we had about like out of I think about 70 people did this, and about 20 got it fully, or 30 got it fully done, and then they got into the draw for the contest itself, and someone won the award. So that's how we used it. And in the past, when we had it virtual, we had a contest. So this contest, because we couldn't use something like passport contest, we had virtual booths. And the virtual booths, the only way that we could engage them was through some questions about each booth. So we asked the companies, the representatives, to come up with a couple of questions about their company, about their booths, and then we combine them to create some sort of trivia questions. And that way people had to check the booths and the information, maybe have a chat with the representative to get the answer to those questions. Some of them were not that easy to find the answer. You had to chat with the person to get the answer. And that way we also had that fun engagement, as well as some interaction that resulted to action for the exhibitors. So that worked well.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad to hear how the exhibitors and sponsors played a big role, and engagement features like the passport contest were effective with increasing that traffic to them. So thank you. And then Lou, I'll ask the same question to you. How have you found ways to use gamification to drive traffic to your exhibitors and your sponsors, and your use of Whova's passport contest?
Sure. The events that I have driven participants to the booths. I mean, and that's one of the biggest goals within our conference committee, whether we had Whova or not, is how do we get vendors' attention? And I'm kind of biased on that because I happen to be a vendor as Ernest when I'm at these conferences too. So what can I do to get people to come not only to my booth, but then the other vendors as well? And so even throughout Whova, we're constantly promoting the vendors. We use the sponsorship feature, the exhibitors feature, the exhibitor virtual booths, and all of that. We encourage our vendors to take pictures of their giveaways and include in their exhibitor booth area. And I know this topic isn't about the exhibitor section within Whova, but I think it's important to point out that that's one way that we drive traffic, to our exhibitors. Within the game, particularly trivia, what's cool about the trivia game, and it's new, so I'm still trying to figure out creative ways to use it. But you can a lot of the Whova gamification to date is their template. Whova has created these games, but we can't do a whole lot outside of our comments to customize it. But with the trivia, we've found ways of not only putting in our theme in there, or maybe even poking members of the officer or board members within the association, within the trivia games. But then also, is there some way we can drive traffic within our trivia game as well? And so sometimes you can kind of interweave, hey, how many vendors do this, and this, and how many specialize in this, and this, walk around the booth, and kind of use it that way. So the passport contest kind of does its own thing. I think I saw somewhere in the question and answer somebody asking, how do you drive people to use that passport contest? I think that the question you really kind of have to ask yourself is, how do you drive people to want to visit your vendors? And so your exhibit area has to be a fun place. I DJ in our exhibiting area. It has to be a place that people want to go to. There has to be giveaways. There has to be an incentive. Put your coffee in your breaks, where your vendors are. But then put in Whova that your coffee and your snacks are going to be in that space, and be creative in how you're doing that. And it's all about marketing promotions and how can you use Whova to do it. You're already paying for Whova. And most of us are paying to use Whova for the networking and the agenda, but you can also use it to really promote the heck out of different sessions and events within the week as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. I'm glad there are a lot of different ways that you were able to utilize these different features for different goals for your event. Now we are going to start with our Q&A shortly, but there's one more question I think would be really beneficial to our audience. And this comes from measuring the success of all of your gamification efforts and the real impact. So what metrics or signs do you look for to know your gamification is actually working? And how do you collect feedback from attendees on their experience? So Kamran, I'll start with you for this one.
Yeah, so that's really an important question to ask ourselves. So how do we measure these things? I think one thing that we've noticed, people give you feedback during the conference that, oh, this was great, or the level of excitement that you see among people competing for a specific award, that really shows that they're interested in this. And also, they may give you feedback that you're sending a lot of notifications. Some people don't like it. Some people say, no, I want to really be aware of what's going on. So you get feedback, one from people themselves during the conference or even after. Another thing is very important to send a survey after the conference and include the app or the gamification or whatever you want to say related to this gamification and engagement in the features that you want to check on, right? So as one of the KPIs. So we put that as one of those items, let's say including how was the food, for instance. Okay, how was the engagement, or how was the passport contest, or the contest in general, or Whova app, right? The conference app. So that way we can get first the ranking. Okay, how many people said this was great? How many people said this was okay? How many people said no, it was not really great? And then you can also have a specific open sort of question about how did they benefit from the contests or games or engagement sort of features of the conference. And you can get written feedback from people. So we really use the survey in order to gauge the audience's attention and feedback. And then we really look at them after the conference. Once we get the feedback, and say, okay, how many people really like this feature? How many people didn't like it? What sort of written feedback we got? And that helped us to really change some of the feature from the first year of in-person to this year that we had it in person, to really complement it or make it better based on the feedback from the audience. So it's very important to come up with some KPIs in order to know what's working, what's not working, and how we can make it better so we kind of engage them better for the next event.
Absolutely. Excuse me. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad to hear how surveys and those session feedback forms were really important at measuring that success and also looking forward for the next event. And Lou, I'd like to ask you the same thing before we move on to our Q&A. So what metrics do you look for to determine how your gamification is actually working? And if there are any feedback forms that you collect from attendees on their gamification experience?
Yeah, the metrics question sounds like the board and the treasurer asking me, to justify future use of Whova. Honestly, I think we get the most, everybody wants metrics and data. And Whova has a fantastic report that you can print out, following, the end of your experience. But a lot of times the feedback and the surveys, unfortunately, aren't completed by attendees. How many of you, complete every survey that you're emailed, on a weekly basis? And if you're like me, probably not very many. So even after all these years, that's still a struggle. But that's not a Whova issue. That's just the way people are with surveys, I think, in this day and age. The biggest way that we kind of measure is the participation. And every year we see an increase in participation. The number of photos that are submitted, the people that you can tell are actually playing to be on the leadership board. You always have people, whenever you're doing an activity, it measures points. So some people are just getting points just for using it, but you can tell that there's people that are actually playing the game. Um, Booth traffic, is there good traffic? Then that's probably speaks to volumes of the passport contest. Now, the passport contest philosophy isn't new to our associations. We've always used sort of like a bingo card, like Cameron suggested, prior to using Whova, like having some type of hunt or, scavenger hunt or something to go around to get all the booths. So that's nothing new. But if we can make the passport contest engaging and make that virtual booth engaging to where they're actually having conversations with the vendors, and the vendors can give us that feedback, then that means we're doing something right. And so after the conference, we usually meet with the vendors, usually before the conference ends, but after they've done tearing down their booth, have a quick little powwow. And one of the questions is, do you see value in the passport contest? And it's usually an anonymous yes. We measure how many photos are taken, how many comments are taken. The comment game or caption contest, it's okay as far as how many people are participating, but then you have those go-getter funny people that love, you know, being trolls and doing comments and stuff. And so that can be kind of fun, but it's not the most of the games. That's probably the least one that I see participation in. But even in that one, we're seeing year to year an increase. And then it's just a matter of measuring the bodies. I mean, it's hard to measure data in this because you're dependent on the feedback and the session questionnaires or what have you. But you can see just if you're really patrolling, if you're really working your conference committee, you can see the participation of people that are dependent on it. Also, I challenge everyone to visit with your speakers, get their feedback on how they were able to use Whova, electronically to connect with their audience and that sort of thing as well.
Wonderful. Thank you once again for sharing all those insights. I'm glad to hear that Whova's reports are useful for helping collect those metrics. And one other thing I'd love to mention is that with our leaderboard contest, you can also boost the points for session feedback forms, polls, surveys to also help incentivize more responses. So I'm really glad to hear that all of those features have been really useful. And that's just about all the time we have for our panel discussion. So we'll now begin the live Q&A for today's session. So once again, I will be moderating this in the Whova app. So also, if there are any questions that you'd like answered, please feel free to vote, and I will start with those questions with the most votes first. So the one that has the highest votes right now is from Christy, who asked, how early do they open the app before the event? I thought 2 to 3 weeks prior was a suggested time based on other trainings, but it seems like they're getting engagement before that. So what's the best timeline? And I'll throw that out for either of you to answer.
Yeah, so for us, as I mentioned, we really want to do it as early as possible, as long as we have some of the features ready. And we do our best to make them ready 3 months before the conference starts. So our aim is to open up as soon as we are allowed to open it up, which is in about 90 days. So we aim for that because, as I said, that really creates engagement. Even if it is using the community part, introducing yourself, you can create some discussion points or challenges, take a selfie or introduce yourself. And that way, people also may share it. The speakers may share it on social media. That could bring more attention to the conference as well as more attendees. So it's important to start as early as possible, at least for us. But I know that we may not be ready, but I would say 2 to 3 weeks is too late for us, definitely too late.
Thanks for sharing. Lou, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I do. And that's interesting because it kind of makes me want to challenge trying beyond 3 weeks. So everyone that I've done is pretty much, and I've done 11, is pretty much around the 3 week period. And the reason why it's sooner, but now you got me thinking, Cameron, and it is an interesting point, is I'm working on with conference committees. Most of the time, the agenda is not ready, so the board isn't comfortable putting some of the information about the agenda within the app, because then it make people think that they don't want to sign up to go to the conference. So that's one of the reasons why we wait. But then the other reason why I wait as an admin is yeah, you get the networking people paying points and stuff, but by you get some of those competitive folks, particularly with the leadership game, pretty competitive off the bat. And yeah, you will have some competitive people coming in later that'll ladder up like he suggested. But I feel like that's when I get a lot of the convoluted conversations within our community out that I have to audit and police out and kind of do. So I've always wondered if it would create more work as from an auditing standpoint of keeping it clean and professional, just because I know that's top of my audience. However, we keep in mind both Cameron and I have different audiences for sure, and that's always which you will have to build this app, to the audience that you're talking to. And I'll give you another example of that. One of the 11, one of them is a leadership symposium. It's only C-level and up. They don't want the fluff. They only want the meat. And so on that one, we're less as cute with our Whova app than we are with the main bigger conferences. So you have to cater to the audience. And so if you think that audience is going to participate, if you can project if you have a lot of frontline folks or a younger audience, yeah, they may want to network a little earlier. I'm just thinking out loud for a second that we have a 50-50 C-level versus frontline, and I'm not sure how that would play out with us. So I think we're at the 3 week mark. If that helps anyone. That may have
Yeah, and
confused.
also if you have control over it or not, meaning for us, it's a conference that we handle, we own, right? So
Yeah.
but if you have a committee that has to make the work ready for you to administer, that's different, right? So definitely, I fully agree. Depending on the conference itself, the audience, you decide which way to go.
Definitely.
That's a
Thank
good
you both. Yeah, those were some great insights. I hope that was helpful, Christy. Another question we have that I'd like to ask is from CJ, asking, what kind of prizes are you handing out for either of you to answer?
What kind of prices?
Yes. So
Price.
prizes, incentives for,
Oh yes. So
yeah.
for prizes, we what we created that really created some sort of buzz was the um, t-shirts, custom t-shirts that they had fun sort of phrases or statements related to projects. So that's fun because people like to wear them. And that was one of our prizes. Like if you do this, or if you win the passport contest, or you win one of these or that, you get not only a t-shirt, but also an award, something like that. So we had this t-shirt that was related to the audience, speak to audience, and then we had ordered other things like backpack and things like that. But we had some cards that on one side it had branding, on the other side it had you won a prize, and then the name of the prize. We put those like they are like business card sort of size. We put them in a container, and then the person takes one, and that's by random. It could be a coupon code, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a water bottle, it could be a backpack. So that's one way that we had the prizes, and they work well. But also during awards dinner ceremony, we had these trophies and frames that we had for, let's say, the networking winner, right? Whoever did the best networking, or whoever was whoever was checking the exhibition hall more than others based on our team noticing people, this sort of thing. So we had those sort of prizes and giveaways, and then we had these awards that we had officially announcing the winners on the awards dinner night.
Thank you. Lou, do you have anything to add about the prize?
Just real, yeah, I mean, just real quick, because I know time's of value here, but the gift cards are like a big thing. They're easy to manage, easy to store, easy to distribute. And typically we save the higher value prize or gift card towards the end, just to keep them hungry and keep them playing. I did mention gift baskets based on the theme are kind of a deal. We did do a free night at the venue where the conference was. We've done that as a prize a few times as well. So just some things to throw out.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, we are running a little bit low on time, but I'd like to ask at least one more question from our Q&A because we have so many great ones. So the next one with the most votes is from Amy, who asked, how have you used gamification in hybrid events? Are they completely separate contests for your virtual attendees?
I've only done one, and my if memory serves, that was back again during the pandemic. I want to say we used them the same way, and it was the prizes were with e-cards. Um, Photo contest was a little bit more interesting because obviously they're sending photos of memes and screenshots of weird things and of how they're feeling about the pandemic and that kind of thing. So I don't know how that works in today's environment, to be quite transparent, but I don't see why you couldn't use any of them in a virtual setting, to be honest with you. You can be very creative with trivia. Icebreakers, can be fun. Um, and then, leadership is boards, people are still going to play. I think where you might have some issues is maybe with the passport contest because it's virtual, but perhaps there's a way that you can cheat the system and use passport as some kind of online gaming to do something other kind of functionality. I would play with that.
Absolutely. And Kamran, do you have anything to add for that?
Yeah, so the passport contest, I think, has two sort of options, right? Either you want to do it in person, so people go and
Oh,
scan. The other one is that they can go and check the booth, the virtual booth, or they interact, or they like these sort of things, and then they get that check mark. So that's still possible in the virtual environment. We haven't had a hybrid version of the conference yet, but we've had 4 years virtual. And we had to come up with some sort of challenges, like take this challenge and take a selfie of yourself and post it, and that gives you some points. We didn't use app for any of the virtual ones. We had our virtual environment that had some community features and challenge features and things like that. That overall worked, and we created some sort of lounge for the participants, VIP lounge and things like that, that overall worked well. So I haven't had the chance yet to use the hybrid features in Whova app, So if we do it another year, so I will be more prepared to talk about what worked and what could work better. But overall, for virtual, it has worked well for us the way that we did it for 4 years.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that experience. Thanks to both of you for answering that question. Unfortunately, we do not have any more time to get to the rest of the questions, but thank you to everyone who did put your questions in the Q&A. They're all wonderful questions, and our Q&A, our chat, our polls will remain open after the session if you'd also like to come back again and check. But it is now time to wrap up today's Event Insider session. Lou and Kamran, thank you so much for being our guest panelists. We really appreciate you joining and sharing all of your insights with us. I know I got some great takeaways from your advice, and I'm sure our audience did too. Other than that, thank you all once again for joining our session today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you again to our guest panelists.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thank you, Lou. And thanks everyone for attending this session. Hope you gain something from this session.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you very much. Good luck with your events.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.